Hey, this is Brian King. If you happen to be watching me live on Facebook, please type hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, please type hashtag replay. And by all means, share this video with people you care about. I suspect they'll thank you. One of the big topics that came up in my conversations yesterday were clients who felt there was a lack of reciprocity or give and take in their relationships, and they really didn't know how to establish it. And one of the main reasons is because they were afraid of pushback from the other people, other folks being angry with them or some kind of other frustration. They just didn't want to deal with it. So they sucked it up and they did the other person's work, they overcompensated, and they felt resentful. Well, needless to say, this is not a dynamic that can continue if you want a healthy relationship. This is something that must change. So how do you do that? The first thing that I recommend is realizing that you're telling yourself a story. You're talking about how things should be, how the other person ought to be acting, how unfair the situation, how it isn't right. And what that story does is it does a real good job of making you feel like a victim. You feel like you're being done unto, you feel like someone else is victimizing you, they're mistreating you. That increases the bitterness you have towards the other person, the resentfulness you have towards the situation, and it drives a wedge between you and your partner, you and your colleague, if it happens to be at work. So the first thing you need to do is recognize that this is just a story. It's a story and nothing else. It's a little play with characters and roles and intentions that you've assigned to everybody else. The intention to victimize you. That's something you created. It might not be the case at all, and usually it isn't. So what do you do with this story? We'll get to that in a second. But first you need to realize that it is one. It's happening between your ears. The second thing I recommend is you must communicate. But don't communicate in a way that you're saying, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. I feel like you're lazy. Anything that's accusatory, you know darn well that's going to lead to an argument, the one thing that you are looking to avoid. So what can you do instead? You model the communication that's needed to eliminate assumption, because what do we know assumption does? It leads to miscommunication and unmet expectations. It also is a little trick people use to protect themselves from having to speak up and self-advocate. So you assume you know what everybody else is thinking when you really don't, and you act on that, and people's feelings get hurt. Okay? So let's back up to what we were talking about. When you communicate, you basically say, okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. My understanding of my responsibilities is this. And this is what I plan on doing to satisfy my responsibilities. Am I correct on this? Oh, yes, you're right. That's exactly. Okay, now, could you please tell me what your responsibilities are and what you're going to do to satisfy them? Because I want to be able to focus on what I'm doing and not have to worry about you. Find other language for it that sounds more diplomatic, but that's the gist of it. Each person needs to declare their understanding of what they're responsible for and the actions they're going to take. Because some people, either because they're unsure what their role is, they need some instruction on what action to take in order to satisfy it. Teenagers, anyone? Okay? But instead of speaking up and looking dumb, or speaking up and invoking the frustration because somebody has to repeat themselves, whatever their reason is, that they don't ask for clarification on their role. They either fudge through it, do it poorly, so someone else steps in and says, oh, just let me do it. Time is being wasted. And then the person who steps in and rescues, likely you, feels better or feels bitter for having to do somebody else's job. Okay? So speak up, clarify each other's expectations, the actions that are going to be taken. And once that's done, you simply focus on your responsibilities and your actions. You let go of the story of what ought to be done, what should be done, what other people are thinking, Because once they've declared it and own the actions, it's not your responsibility. They've taken ownership of it. You're owning your actions, your space, and all you need to do is focus on that. If other people fall short, you can always go back to them and say, oh, how are you doing with the such and such a responsibility? And maybe they say, oh, well, I got stuck here. I don't know what to do there. Your only question is, how can I support you at doing what you need to do? Not how can I do it for you? How can I support you? Maybe they need some instruction, a little reminder, whatever it is. But you don't rescue, you don't take it upon yourself. You simply help them out. So those are some ways to set some boundaries, not only in your mind, by increasing your own self-discipline around the story you tell yourself, your own self-discipline around the impulse to rescue. Easier said than done? Of course. This is a habit of yours. It takes some work to change the habit. And it just so happens, I am uniquely qualified to help you change this habit. And if this is something that's disruptive enough in your life that you want to change it, then reach out to me and I'll help you do it. But in the meantime, contemplate this. Comment about it. Let me know this was helpful. Share it with people that can benefit from it. And as always, remember, life is good.